Australian families are expected to transfer $3.5 trillion worth of wealth between generations over the next 20 years. Baby boomers have accumulated most of this wealth and are already starting to distribute it to their children. Well, joining me now is Kirsten Taylor-Martin, partner and national head of family business consulting at Grant Thornton. Kirsten, thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just explain this wealth transfer that's currently happening and why is it significant for our economy?
It is significant for the economy because at the moment only 12% of family businesses successfully transition to the third generation, and only 1 in 20 families transition more wealth than what they inherited. So if we don't get this right, the stakes have just got a whole lot higher with 3.5 trillion transferring. For the economy, we could have a lot more businesses go bankrupt, and that could cause unemployment because family businesses currently employ 50% of the Australian economy. Also, with that level of spending, it's going to keep pushing up higher inflation. But for us, the biggest issue is the family wealth is just going to start to decrease unless we really start to work on the financial acumen of the rising generation coming through.
Yeah, what point does a family start planning its wealth transfer process? Is it when the head of the family is getting close to death, or does it happen a long time before that?
This is the problem, is that people aren't planning. So in many situations, we're finding out the outcome when they're actually reading out the will.
The will. Yeah.
I'm going to use an example, but The Gentleman was a fantastic example. So
TV
with
show,
that series, the eldest son thought it was coming to him.
Yeah.
And then they read out the will, skipped a whole, well, didn't skip a generation, skipped to the younger brother.
Yeah.
And as an audience, you kind of wonder, why did Dad make that decision? And then you see the eldest brother dancing as a chicken and you think Dad knew.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot as well. So we don't so much see that they miss like a sibling, but what we are seeing is they're skipping a generation.
Right.
So I worked with a client and he was at his daughter's wedding and the father of the groom came up and said, "My son married up." The next day on the golf course with the solicitor, he rewrote his will, skipped a whole generation because of that one comment that was made. So this is what we're seeing. Now, when that happens, they usually put someone quite trustworthy to help. And I can say in all the examples where they've skipped a generation, the wealth has definitely increased. But as you can imagine, so have the lawsuits, and the harmony in the family just gets totally disrupted. So what we'd prefer to see is start planning earlier, start the conversations now, like what's the future going to look like and how can we start to get things in place now so that we can actually achieve that outcome, but also helping improve the financial acumen of that younger generation because they're going to get so much wealth that we want to see grow, not diminish.
And what about times when parents want to, say, hand over the family farm or the family manufacturing business to their kids, but the kids don't want it? Like, what happens then?
Well, that's an interesting scenario, and we are seeing that businesses are going up for sale.
Yeah.
Because as much as we want to keep family businesses in the family, if the family don't want it, maybe it is better off to sell and to have the wealth and then work out what does the family want to do in increasing that wealth. But the other thing that we do see is sometimes they will get someone external from the family in to run it, and then the family take a different role and they're owners, so they receive profits, but they're not actually running the business. The biggest problem we find with that is it's very hard because, as you can understand, families have like certain values that they run their business by and they want to create a culture. Bringing someone in that's not a family member to have the same family values, that's the hardest bit to try and capture.
And are there any specific industries or sectors of the economy where this wealth transfer happens more often or more commonly than others?
The one that we're seeing as having like the most issues with it at the moment is agriculture. And the reason for that is their biggest asset is often their farm. And in many instances, say they have 3 children, there'll be one child that lives on the farm and runs the farm, and the other 2 might have totally different careers and have nothing to do with the farm. And the parents usually want to keep things even, but want to keep the farm in the family. So it's how do you actually achieve that? So what we actually try to do is there's a lot of strategies you can use to actually make that successful, but it's important to speak to every single family member and get a really good understanding what they want so that you tailor the strategy to achieve that goal.
We don't have much time at all, but the younger generation, just really quickly, what are some challenges they're facing?
There's a couple of challenges. Firstly, they've got really big shoes to fill because the baby boomers, a lot of them are the founders or they've gone through real hyper growth. So,
Kirsten, I'm sorry, we've run out of time,
right.
but that is a very good point at the end there.